had joined me twice. So hello, everybody. I'm sorry for the delay, and thanks very much for joining us. I could hear Georgia actually, so I've heard the introduction. My name is Duncan Gibbons, and I'm one of the people who works with the Greenhouse. And the Greenhouse is a what we call a community eco hub in London Road in St Albans. It acts as a kind of citizens advice bureau for sustainability. And so we invite people to come and ask us questions about sustainability. We run events like this one, or which we're running today jointly with Greener Together, and we do various other bits and pieces, including some recycling. And we were keen to give people an opportunity to understand a little bit more about how recycling is done in the St Albans district. And we're part of the Greener Together organisation that St Albans District Council has set up over the last year and a half or so. And they kindly asked us to put together this event, which we're calling Recycling Your Questions Answered. We're going to spend a little bit of time at the start with me explaining a little bit about the recycling that we do at the Greenhouse. And then each of the speakers in turn, so we have, I think Georgia may have introduced already, but Louise Palmer, who's the recycling officer from SADC. Oliver Peat, who is a projects officer from Veolia, and Vicky Guttridge, who is the founder of Soil Squad, which is a composting project, a food composting project, which has recently been set up with the help of some funds from Greener Together. And when we've gone through those, then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask some questions. If you'd like to, as we go along, put your any questions you have, so if you have them already, please do this now, put them in the chat. But if you have any as you go along, please enter them in the chat as well. And Georgie will be monitoring those as we go along. And when the guys have done their talks, then we'll move to the Q&A, and we'll try and get through as many of those as we can. Very quickly then, as I say, the Greenhouse was set up about a year ago now, in April last year. It sits at 46 London Road. It's above a little eco shop called Jefferson Eco, which sells environmentally friendly products produced by local businesses. And we're relatively small in terms of our premises, so we have to sort of focus on particular things. But as I say, we try to be a human search engine, if you like, for people when they come in on sustainability issues. And we cover similar ground to another organisation you may be familiar with, which is Sustainable St Albans, which is a local charity, started off as a transition town set up, is now a fully blown charity, and runs various events, including until this year, an annual Sustfest. This year it's spread over 4 weekends, and we work closely with them. In the hub, and how we would sort of think of ourselves as differentiating ourselves in something like Sustainable St Albans is we're there every day. We do a little bit of recycling. We have an eco library. We provide a little bit of advice on energy conservation and wildlife conservation. But recently we've set up something called a Library of Things. I don't know if you've come across that before, but essentially it's what it says. It's a library, but it's stuff, not books. And you can come and instead of perhaps having your I always get told off for using this example, but instead of having your patio cleaner, which you keep in the back of your shed or don't have room for in the back of your shed and leave in your mother-in-law's shed like I do, instead of buying one of those, using it once a year and then finding it hard to try and find somewhere to put it, you can come and borrow one of those from us for, let's say, £4. So we're set up as an inclusive community operation. So there are other commercial libraries of things where you would pay, considerably more than that. But we try to put something together that allowed other people, most people, to be able to take advantage of it. So check us out. We're on Share St Albans and as a website, and you may find something that you like and would like to come and borrow from there. So on the recycling front, one of the things we try to do at the greenhouse is to try to help people understand that without being too preachy about it, try and help them understand that it doesn't have to be too hard to do the things that can make a difference. And recycling, fortunately, we live in a borough, in a district where recycling is taken very seriously, and we're very grateful for Louise to come along and talk to us about it today. But there are still some things that people would find difficult to recycle, in the curbside collections, for example. So we try to show that it's not impossible to do that and can be quite easy. So, for example, we collect blister packs, pill packs, which aren't terribly easy to recycle right now. But we have a collection point, and we take those to somewhere which does recycle them. And similarly, we do various other things. We have printer cartridges we'll take, and some of these you can do through other means, but particularly, for example, the printer cartridges, the way we do that, we get a little bit of money back on them. So it helps us to continue to do the work that we do. We do dental products, old toothbrushes and interdental brushes, that sort of thing. Small electrical gadgets, we can take phones, cameras, MP3 players, not that you see too many of those around these days. And then a sort of eclectic mix of kind of old Blue Peter type collection things like stamps, old coins, and costume jewelry and that kind of stuff, which we have another outlet that sells those for us and to make sure that they're recycled or reused. We also take glasses, old glasses, which are then reused through another local charity. And the final example is something that I like very much, because it shows that this is something that things are changing. So we take Pringles tubes, but soon we won't, because Pringles themselves, the people who make Pringles, have changed their packaging so that to a large degree you can do them at curbside. And that's exactly where we're trying to go with some of this, which is, the blister packs, it shouldn't be people like us doing blister packs. It should be people like Boots. And Boots, actually, some of you may know, do that to a certain extent, but they do it in a way that doesn't make it terribly easy to do it with any scale. So that's what we do. But there's a whole world out there of really serious waste management and recycling work that goes on. And a lot of it is done through our local councils. Sometimes it's split between the district council and the county council, and that's to an extent the case here. And I'm sure Louise will go into that with you. And so sometimes it can be a little bit confusing as to what you do with what. But there are, fortunately, in this district, there's some really good literature on the website for the council that can help with this. And equally, somebody like Louise may come along to one of these events and explain it to you in a little bit more detail anyway. So that's what we're going to do now. We'll move on to Louise first, and then I think we'll move to Oliver, who's going to tell us about Veolia, who are the local, the St Albans District Council's kind of waste management contractor. And then we'll move on to Vicky after that. So Louise, over to you. I think you're on mute.
Basics. Sorry, everybody. Hello. Yes, I'm Louise Palmer, and I'm the waste and recycling officer for St Albans District Council. I've been in this role for 21 years, so I've seen quite a few changes and how we've sort of expanded the service over the years. So I didn't always work here. Prior to that, I've worked in sort of like, I worked for the tax office. But when I was expecting my daughter 24 years ago, I always knew that I was going to use cloth nappies, that I would never be using disposables. So I investigated cloth nappies, and just through sort of networking and buying different products, I came across a group called Get Real, the campaign for cloth nappies in Herts and Beds, and they were looking for a coordinator. So I applied for that job, and I ran that campaign for a couple of years, and I got to know all the councils within Hertfordshire and the different recycling officers, and we introduced a scheme whereby we would give £40 it was initially, for families using cloth nappies, because that's how much it cost us per tonne in landfill tax, and a child would typically get through 1 tonne of disposable nappies. So that was where my journey started, and then the job at the council came up, and I've been here ever since. And we do still promote cloth nappies, but we also promote sustainable period wear, continence wear, and that is something that very much I work with all the other councils in the county, and that's through a network called Waste Aware. Hopefully you'll have seen that on some bins, but that's all of the district and borough councils will get together once a month and talk about what we're doing, share best practice, and share our resources. So we have quite a lot of campaigns that we've been working on over the years, including clothes swaps, electrical recycling, fighting fast fashion, home composting, scrap, which is the campaign against fly tipping, the Recycle Right campaign, remember your reusables, repair cafes, shop local, and the unwearables for all your textiles that have like fallen to pieces. So that's how we work with counties, a lot of promotional events and literature. But as a team within St Albans Council, as myself and 3 colleagues, and we do monitor the contract and take phone calls and emails, but the contract also includes so refuse and recycling, litter and litter bins, street cleansing, leaf sweeping, and inspecting streets once a month, graffiti removal, abandoned vehicles, fly tipping, fly capture reports, which are submitted to DEFRA, waste data flow, tickets, making sure the tickets tally and we send those to county, checking planning applications to make sure that there's enough bin store capacity for the number of bins, and community engagement work. So the 4 of us are kept fairly busy. I think we're, on the whole, we work really well with Veolia and are providing a good service. There are pockets of real frustrations that we are very aware of. Things like just little operational things, like if crews don't put bins and boxes back, it's so frustrating. It's frustrating for us, for the supervisors, and I cannot give you an explanation other than to say I think it is just countrywide. I just hear it over and over. So that's basically what I do and our team does. I'm going to hand you over to Oliver now. He can tell you more from Veolia's perspective, but if there's any questions you think of about our service, what we recycle, why we recycle it, how we recycle it, then obviously I will be more than happy to answer those later. So Oliver.
Great, thank you, Louise. Right, I think I will, you covered off some really good points, which dovetails quite easily into what I've got. So I've got a few slides that I will hopefully be able to present to you now. And if you could just let me know once you can see them, that would be great. Or yeah, thumbs up, cool, brilliant, right. Then we will go. So yes, I am Oliver Peat and I work in the strategy team within Veolia. I've been in the waste and recycling industry for about 10 years now. across sort of private sector, and but I've always come back to working with our local authority partners, because I think that there's real opportunities there, and it's a particularly exciting time, I think, in the waste and recycling industry, because we are seeing the biggest, I'd say, the biggest raft of legislative changes come into play for probably the last 20 years, and they're all sort of kicking in over the next couple of years now. So it's going to be quite a bit of change across the country, and I think it's going to be change for the good, and it's going to be some quite exciting times of what's to come. But when I first started at Veolia, I was in the communications team, and I covered, one of the areas that I covered was St Albans, so I know it quite well. I won't confess to know it nearly as well as Louise, but I'll do my best at taking you through some of what we do on a day-to-day, and happy to take some questions afterwards as well. So, who are we? Well, here's the team. We're funny looking bunch of people, and we sort of stick ourselves in Ronson's way. We look after, it's like Louise says, we look after the everyday street cleansing and waste collections and recycling that you see. So if you do see us out and about, then please do give us a wave. I guess starting at streets, so we look after everything from washing the pavements, litter picking, sweeping, everything like that. We use, quite large vehicles like some of the ones that you can see here to do the pavement washing and the road washing as well in sweeping. We also do everything from picking up fly tips to, reporting some of these abandoned vehicles, and of course, cleaning up the graffiti that you may see every now and again. But hopefully we get there before you see some of it. So yes, if you think you see some, then just imagine the stuff that you don't see, because we get there before that. But I think the focus for today is to really look at the waste and recycling side of the service we do. So yes, we collect the bins from the 60-odd thousand properties across St Albans every week, and that's where I'm going to really be diving into today. And last year we got this range of new vehicles. This is just a handful of them, ranging from new 26-ton refuse vehicles, like the one that you can just about see at the back, to our big mechanical street sweepers on the left-hand side. There's a small one just behind the team in the middle, and then we've got fleets of new food waste vehicles as well, which have come in just at the right time for us with what's going on with some of the policy changes that are happening out there. So it's a really exciting time for us. So while we talk about recycling, how does St Albans perform, and in particular, how do they do compared to the rest of the country? Well, I'm pleased to say that the answer is very well. We've got the average UK recycling rate, which is around 44%, and it's been at that level for quite a number of years now. We saw a sharp increase in that probably about 15 years ago, from about the 20% mark, and then it's sort of stabilized around this sort of mid-40s point. And you'll see that St Albans is significantly better than that. So these are the most recent available rates that are available publicly, and we have been performing at about 60.1%. So that means that out of all of the material that we dispose of within St Albans, 60% of it gets recycled, which is really, really impressive, particularly when you see how the rest of the UK is getting on. And where does that put us? Love in a really good position of being 4th in the UK. So it is a really, really impressive job that everyone's done. And actually, back in 2021, we actually topped the UK table, and we became the best recyclers in the country. That was during the COVID year, when perhaps some other services suffered, and quite understandably, but I'm pleased to say that we managed to pull in additional resources from elsewhere, and we were able to work closely with Louise and the rest of the team to make sure that we were collecting the bins as best as we can during that difficult period of time. And that meant that we were able to recycle more than most other places were during that time. So it is really good, but we really can't do this without all of you. And I think you all deserve a bit of a pat on the back for how you do approach your sustainable waste management here in St Albans. So thank you very much. Before I kind of dive into that side, I thought I would just sort of talk about some other things. It's not just bins that we do in St Albans. We try and become, we've tried to establish ourselves as sort of a pillar in the community as well. So we like to try and work with schools where we can, and the rest of and some other community groups. So here we have our Orchards project that that we started a few years ago now. It's a national campaign that we started, but in St Albans we've tried to plant as many trees as we can and donate as many of these mini orchards to schools around the borough. This was a photo taken a couple of years ago when I actually attended one of the school plantings myself. So yeah, it's a fun day out. Always a fun day doing these things. We've also got our sustainability fund. These are small pots of money that we donate through Veolia and the contract with St Albans Council to small projects around that are particularly important, we think, to community groups. So this is one that came about last year at the Civic Rose Garden, where we helped the local teams in some of their restoration efforts that they've did there as well. So it's the small pots of funding around up to about £500 or £1,000, where we can support those groups in achieving those really nice projects that mean a lot to a lot of people and to us as well. More recently as well, we have been part of a large group called the Veolia Environmental Trust, which is sort of a large pot of money, and we have donated some of that towards Highlands Park and some of the restoration that they've done in that playground as well. So we're happy to support these groups where they come about. Not only that, we will try and support some of the community litter picks that happen around the borough with some of our community members as well. So this one was a recent one from earlier this year at Cotlands Wick Community group. About 20 people that we helped here, and they helped us as well. We provided them with all the tools and high-vis and everything that they needed in order to help pick up some of the litter around the park. Pleased to say that the group managed to pick up 50 bags of litter from that day. So it was a really good event, and these events are always quite important and impactful, I think, and it shows that what the power of community can actually bring to around the borough. So if you are interested, then please do get in touch. And then a final one, just to say that the charity Christmas tree recycling collections that are carried out for the Hospice of St. Francis. It's a really, really great initiative, and it's a really important initiative as well. I think it's now in its 6th year, could be its 7th year actually. And it's a really, really lovely initiative where the volunteers from the hospice actually go around and collect the trees themselves with some other volunteers like the local Lions clubs, and I know the local rugby teams have got involved as well. They then bring it back to the yards where we then pitch in and we make sure that all the trees are recycled properly. And it's just a really good circular event that takes place, bringing in the community. And more importantly, it raises quite a significant amount of money each year for the hospice, in excess of about £20,000 every single January. So really, really good initiative, and it's something that we're very proud to support every year. So I thought I'd then move on to some myth busting, because we all like a bit of that. And I thought, since we're talking about recycling, I'd show you some nice pictures of our bins and our waste vehicles, because who doesn't like to see those? I think I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit here, and perhaps there's other people on this call that have attended that could probably tell me a thing or two about recycling, and I'm more than happy to hear that as well afterwards. But I thought I'd just start with the first one, which is the one that we hear all the time, which is, what's the point in recycling? Because it all goes in the same vehicle. All goes in the same truck. We separate out our paper and cards from the rest of recycling, but then I see it all going into the same vehicle anyway. So what's the point? And yes, you're right. It does go into the same vehicle. You're spot on there. However, for those of you that might have a keener eye than me and perhaps can squint a little bit closer to the screen, I should have made the pictures a little bit quicker. You can see the back of this vehicle has two different compartments to it. It's got a left-hand side and a right-hand side. The left-hand side is slightly smaller and the right-hand side is slightly bigger. So it's roughly about 30% on one side, 70% capacity the other side. And what we do is we put the two different material streams into the different compartments, and they're completely separated down the middle. It's something called a twin stream vehicle. So we make sure that the materials are separate the whole time, and then we take them to different places and we can tip them individually. So completely segregated the whole time. So what goes in the left hand side, this is where your green and black boxes come in handy, and this is where your paper and card goes. You can see that our team will pick these up and then they'll actually tip them into another wheelie bin. So that can also be confusing, because you might see that, well, they just take my box and they tip it into another bin. And yes, they do. But this is a particular bin that they take around with them along the streets. This is called a transfer bin. So the little boxes, they can't actually lift those directly into the vehicle. They've got to put them into a bin that can actually then be lifted onto the back of the vehicle. So it's a health and safety thing, just to make sure that we are collecting the material as safely and quickly as possible from the rounds. So they'll put it into this bin that will then get loaded onto the back of the vehicle, as you can see on the left-hand side, and off it goes. We then have on the right-hand side the black bins, which is for your other recyclable materials, your packaging for glass, metals and plastics, which will go into there as normal. So as you can see, kept nice and separate, no mixing there whatsoever. Then if we go on to your green caddies, something similar kind of happens here, where these are tipped into another transfer bin, which might look like a brown bin. It could be a black bin. We've got different color bins. It's basically whatever bin we can use that's most efficient on the day. But they get tipped into these bins again, because as you can see, the opening of the vehicle is far too high for us to lift those caddies overhead and pour it in. So we put it into a transfer bin. It then gets lifted onto the back of the vehicle, as you can see here. And this is one of our brand new food waste vehicles that makes sure that instead of it getting compacted, it stays nice and open. And it means that, we have no spillage and things like that. So keeps it nice and clean and tidy. We've then got the green bins, which of course is for your garden waste, in a completely separate vehicle. You can see that this is not a twin stream vehicle. This is a completely just single stream vehicle. It's open back, you can see. So this is a service that we provide on a chargeable basis. So if you do want to have your garden waste collected, then please do check us out on the website, and you can get signed up for that service as well. We've then got some other recycling that we like to do, which is for small electricals, batteries and clothes. So you may or may not be aware of this, but you can recycle all of that at your curbside, which I think is really, really great. It means that you obviously have the option of taking these to things like clothes and good quality items that could be reused to your charity shops to be donated, and then it can be reused, which of course is important, and then it means that they can get some income from it as well. But if you find that you've got textiles and electricals or batteries that can't be reused, then we can recycle them. And all you need to do is make sure that they're bagged up in your own plastic bags and left on top of your bin. We will then take them, and you may be able to see that we've got a little cage on the side of our vehicles where we can pop these in to the sides. So these do get taken, and they're kept completely separate from the rest of the material that goes onto the vehicle. Finally, we have our brown bins, which are for general waste, and as you can see, this goes onto a completely different vehicle, and this is a single chamber vehicle as well. So there's this is all just for one type of waste stream, and again, no mixing whatsoever. Everything is kept nice and separate. So I hope that's explained one side of it. And then the other side of it, the other sort of main myth is, well, it all goes to the same place. So is there much use? And what I would say is that it does not go all to the same place. It all gets collected separately, and it wouldn't make sense for us then to put it all in together to go to the same place. So we make sure that we deliver it to different places. So we've got a few that I've shown up on the screen here. Paper and card, which goes to a paper and card processing and recycling facility called Palm. We've got all of the other recyclable packaging that you've got for glass, metals, and plastics, which gets taken to one of our own facilities at Veolia in a place called Rainham, where we have lots of high-tech material, like you can see on the screen, to sort the material into different streams where it can be. And it separates out all of them, and then they can go off to be recycled separately. We've got food waste, which will go to anaerobic digestion at a facility in Severn Trent, not far from here, and it's converted into fertilizer and energy generated from the processes fed back into the grid. And then finally, for garden waste, it goes to a company called Willing Biogas, where it is converted into compost and can be used then on farmland and for everyone else as well. So that's where all of your recycling goes. Make sure that it's nice and separate. Realize that I'm going slightly over, but I thought I would just finish on one more slide, because I understand that we might have some people in here from local businesses within St Albans. And I wanted just to highlight that one of the bits of legislation that has come in is something called simpler recycling. This is being phased in over 3 years. The first phase has happened earlier this year for what they call large businesses. Now, a large business could just be if you've got 10 employees or more, or 10 full-time staff to be specific. If you do, then this means that from at the end of March this year that you're required by law to make sure that you provide recycling services, or you have recycling services set up. So this is very important now. If you're a smaller business with less than 10 full-time staff, then you're not, you don't have to do this just yet, but you will have to do this come 2027. So it's just something to be aware of now, and you may want to get ahead of it and start making sure that you've got recycling services in place beforehand. And it's effectively everything that you can see on the screen here. It's everything from your dry mixed recyclables. You need to have food waste collection as well, and we can also offer a separate glass service if you're something like a restaurant or a bar as well, but the option is available to you. So it was just something to say that if you do have questions about this, then I will try and answer as many of them as I can. If you are a local business, then please do reach out to either myself or another Veolia colleague, and we can help you to set up these services for you. We also offer general waste and other one-trip solutions for things like wood and mixed metals and construction waste and things like that using skips. So if you do have any of those items as well, then please get in touch and we can help you out. And that's me. So thank you very much. I'll stop talking now, and we'll pass you on to Vicky.
No, Vicky, just 2 seconds. That was great, Oliver. Thank you very much. And I just want to encourage people to put some questions in the chat. I've put a couple in myself. Somebody has phoned one in, which I see Trisha has just put in. So please put them in if you think of them as we go along, so that you don't forget them, and the guys will try to answer them at the end. From Oliver Pete. to it just felt like a segue, didn't it?
From peat to composting.
Segue. I
It's almost as if we planned this.
Off you go, Vicky,
Oliver,
thanks.
you set me up perfectly for the most precious item in the planet, you know, coming into the work that we're doing. So thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, everybody, and I'll just put it into present mode so you can get a full screen. Duncan, can you see that in full screen now? Hopefully.
Yes, I can. It's good.
Lovely, thank you. So hi everybody, my name is Vicky Gutteridge and I'm the founder of Soil Squad. Soil Squad is a brand new community interest company. It was founded only last year in 2024 and we're based right here in the heart of St Albans. We are really incredibly lucky that, well, actually, on Christmas Eve, so it was the biggest Christmas present I've ever had, we had a deposit of the Net Zero Fund from St Albans District Council Greener Together, which we applied to set up a community composting hub for the community of St Albans. And we were successful in that bid, which allowed us to get going on all the infrastructure and everything that we needed to create your very own composting hub. And we're really, really pleased to say that it now exists. So if I could just kind of step back a little bit and give you a little bit of history, because it's a really sort of personal story, really. I'm not a soil scientist. I don't have a degree in ecology or anything, but actually I was just quite simply somebody that really enjoyed growing my own food. I had a community allotment, my own allotment, and I set up a community allotment too for a charity I was working with. And quite simply, I just fell in love with composting. And my working partner, Karen Stubb, who also does a podcast with me, equally was a big influence. And we just ended up on our podcast talking about compost because there's something distinctly satisfying about transforming organic waste, materials that so much, and maybe previously in my old life, used to think of as something to send away. Recognizing that actually, if you kept hold of all of those things, organic waste like food waste, anything that comes from a tree like cardboard or wood chips, things that come from sheep like wool or grass cuttings, wood shavings, all of those things are actually an abundant resource that you can use yourself and turn into compost and transform into brand new life. And to be honest with you, I was just absolutely mesmerized by this, to the point where I kind of enjoyed growing my compost more than growing my onions. So I got deeply inspired, and I did a bit of research into it, and I watched the film Kiss the Ground. And if anyone hasn't seen it, I'd really recommend it. For me, it activated me as a mother to think, I just want to help the planet. And there is something I can do in my very own patch, albeit in a very small way, to start capturing carbon and perhaps doing our own little bit to start feeding our soils and regenerating our soils to have nutrient dense soil, really rich plants, excellent food, and to maintain some really good mental and physical health. And so from that, that was really my sort of starting point of why I wanted to set up the Community Composting Hub and Soil Squad. So the idea was born, and Greener Together allowed us to flourish. So our mission is quite simply to turn food waste really from local businesses into really healthy compost. And that compost can either go back to that local business if they want, or they quite often want to send it on to our local schools to regenerate local school gardens. So that's going to support their sort of plant life and biodiversity, and really teach the children how, and students, how from something that is a waste product, they can sort of actively see that that's going to nourish their own gardens themselves. So we really champion circular economy principles. We're all about delivering educational workshops across the district, hosting events and awareness occasions, just to inspire others to get into that untapped potential of waste, and to inspire those sustainable practices as well. So we were, like I said, really lucky. We started off with the Net Zero Fund, and we bought a Rydan hot composter. This is Karen and I back in sort of February when we took delivery of this thing. Now we pop our food waste into here, and it gets to thermophilic temperatures, which allows us to kill off all the pathogens that might be present, sort of E. coli, salmonella, and those sorts of things. To get it to those really hot temperatures, and then to kind of cool it down later to bring back the microbial life. Next to that picture, you'll see us on that fantastic cargo bike, because that's the way we collect all this food waste. We go round St Albans, you'll see us, give Karen a wave. It's obviously sort of low emission way of collecting, really going back to sort of Mother Nature's pace, really. Going off around, we collect from sort of SA Law in town and the Little Star Cafe and local residents, and we collect the buckets of food waste, sort of that ultra low, hyper local system, and we try and stay off grid as much as possible. Even today, our wonderful volunteer Kevin was installing our water harvesting system, so we're really hoping that we won't be using any kind of water other than rainwater. That's the long-term plan. So just so you could have a whistle-stop tour, if you can imagine, I would give you in your workplace a bucket, and you're going to collect everything that you might possibly collect in composting, because a lot of people, and probably most of you on this call, already compost, but those really tricky items like fish, like dairy products, like bread and meat, all of those things that can't go into your cold composter, often they might go in the curbside bin that you have for your collection for your workplace, but actually they can go all in this bucket, and we can take the whole lot, because we do a system called Bokashi composting. And essentially that's fermenting food waste. So even over the 3-week period that you're collecting your food waste, you're actually kind of fermenting your food, which allows you to keep that food waste on site overnight, even up to a week, because it's actually food in process at that moment. So for those of you that are worried about your sort of your food standards, actually it's a process still. Your food is still in process. It's fermenting, so that allow you to keep the food on site for longer. So then we come along, Karen comes along on a Wednesday on her cargo bike, and we pop that bucket into the cargo bike, and we cycle it back to our composting hub here, and we pop it into the hot Rydan, and that processes for about 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks, and then we mature it for anything up to a year, and we can put it in these beautiful Hessian bags, or you can bring along a bucket if you like to, so keep down all the plastics. We don't really want to do any plastic packaging, and then we can deliver that back, either back to your workplace or onto your local school. So for example, SA Law in town, they decided they don't want their compost back, and they're very generously going to donate all of the compost that they produce to our local Stag school, the girls' school up the road. And they have a wonderful kitchen garden that they grow from, that we help out on a Friday afternoon, so that keeping it in the loop, closing that local loop, is really, really worthwhile for us, and also for SA Law as well, knowing that they're doing good locally. And the girls at Stag School are growing their own waste, and again put it back into their own composter as well, which we're teaching them how to compost. So you can see that really simple circle that we're trying to encourage and show people how easy it is to do yourself. And like I said, the beauty of it is this is a system that takes everything, all the unusual things, all your cooked food, your meat, fish, dairy, all of those things we can take, and we put them in our recycled buckets. So here, this is from a builder's merchant. We pick up the buckets. So wherever we can, we're reusing and recycling all the infrastructure that we set up. That's really important to us. It all goes into the hot composter, and then it goes into these maturation bins. They're about 1-ton bins, and we've got about 4 of them. And once the temperatures have cooled down, we can then introduce the worms, and that's the fun bit. The worms go in and they do the work. To be honest, Karen and I are just pure bystanders at this point, and it's all of the worms and the microbes. The microbial life really takes hold now. So we're going to be able to pop this under the microscope, and we're going to see nematodes and protozoa and bacteria. It's going to be a living compost, and this is why we can entice schools. You know, the young children that we speak to are fascinated that the ground beneath our feet is actually alive and living, and so is your compost that we produce. And that's something that we're really, really proud of, that our compost is more like an inoculant than sort of a dead waste matter. It's living. So you only need a pinch of it to make a big difference. So here's a couple of photos. This is Karen collecting from the community pantry. St Albans Community Pantry, as you probably all know on this call, is the most brilliant food distribution centre in St Albans, taking food waste from local supermarkets and giving it back to the community. And what they cannot recycle goes in one of those grey buckets, which is pretty good. Per week, the community pantry only produce 1 bucket of food. Well, I say food waste, it's actually a food resource, because we take it, we compost it for them, and then we return it to their community allotment where they grow food to go back into the food bank. Again, you can see those circular economy principles coming into play. And here's the wonderful Kelly Pike at SA Law. I think Kelly's on the call tonight. She was brilliant advocate for setting us up with SA Law there, and we go there every 3 weeks and collect their tea bags and all of their sort of lunchtime food waste. We're really present in our local schools. We're really proud to be collecting all of the food waste from Berners Heath Junior School as well. We're so delighted to be able to do that and to make it an integrated part of the children's day. They know all about Soil Squad. They know where their food is going as they scrape it into the buckets. They see the cargo bike come down the road, and their Eco Council are going to be visiting us at the site. And eventually, they really want to be able to do this and get their own Raidan in school, and so that the children can see for their own eyes that it's not waste away, that they can actually process waste. Because in 2050, the reality bites, right? And they're going to be wanting to preserve their soils, to save their water, to slow down the flow of water, to increase the carbon storage in their soils. So if we can just teach those skills as basic skills at this point, that's a really strong message for us. And then, of course, coffee grounds are the most brilliant resource that everyone sort of sees as waste. A lot of people do. So we go around all the local cafes like Little Star and Simmons and Communities Thirst and Fade to Black and collect all of their coffee grounds too. And then all of those businesses are going to feed back into our, as I said, into our Soil Squad schools. Coming to the end of the presentation now, but obviously a huge part of what we do is getting this message across, and we love to do our workshops and education as well. So here's me at the St Albans Spring Festival doing a bokashi composting workshop, which was brilliant to be able to do. And we've got a few of those coming up at the Greenhouse. Is our Christmas and sort of winter venue when it's raining, and then we have the pleasure in the summer months to do workshops on our actual site on the community hub. And this is us with the Environment Agency, and we were building a Johnson Su bioreactor. And if you want to know what that is, come along on Saturday, and we'll be creating that with a group of people on Saturday as well, a no-turn method. So we're really young, we're really small, we're no competition for Viola. It's just an education piece. It's an exhibition piece. So our impact so far is only from the 5th of March, and essentially we've got 5 subscriptions on the go. We've got 3 homes, 2 businesses and a whole school of 360 children. We've diverted over 545 kilograms of food waste by hand and by bike, and we've created 1.75 tons of compost as well in these maturation bins. We've educated over 140 people, local people in St Albans, who are really keen to bokashi compost themselves. And how brilliant would that be if we make our loads lighter for us and for Viola, and we're doing it ourselves in our own gardens or our own community spaces. We're supporting compost composting in at least 3 schools, if not more. It's going up with assemblies, but that's our core. And really what we want to do next is to get that going even more, to get more businesses on board that connect with schools as part of their CSR. And that's me bang on 15 minutes. Thank you.
That was absolutely brilliant, Vicky. Thank you so much. And it's extremely hopeful. And I think the other thing that I really like about when you were saying at the end there, you know, we're not a competition for we can all do our own bit, you know, and it's brilliant that we've got a supportive infrastructure like SADC and Veolia to try and do the big heavy lifting. But we all need to play our part, and we all can play our part, and I think that's a really important message and a hopeful message. So thank you, all three of you. That was brilliant, and it has generated a few questions. And what I think we should do, Georgia, is perhaps just go back up to the start of the chat and start working our way through. We've got. We've actually got another hour if we need it, but I think we've probably got at least half an hour's worth of questions that we can work through. So please stay with us. If you've still got some questions, or if there are some supplemental questions, please chuck them in the chat, and we'll Georgia and I will ask them for you. So if your question isn't answered by us, please let us know in the chat, and we'll try and follow it up. So Georgia, let's go back up to the start, shall we? And,
yes. I think the first thing I just want to say is there are 2 messages in the chat with links for anyone who hasn't seen the chat yet, who's opening it for the first time now. I am not at this point able to verify where these links have come from. It might be that somebody's joined, put something in the system, and then left because they wanted to get the event transcribed or something, and it could be harmless, but I just think for safety, let's just not click them, everyone, because I just can't verify them at this time. The event is being recorded and transcribed anyway, so do not worry about that if it's something regarding anything like that. But yes, anyway.
But the chat is safe, isn't it, Georgie? So
yeah, the chat is absolutely fine. Just don't click on any of the links in those messages that say, "Hi, I'm an AI assistant," just because I just can't verify it. I've been trying through some of the presentations, but I'm not able to, so I don't want anyone getting a bad surprise. But yes, I think you're right. I think we can probably start going through the questions. So the first question in the lineup is, how are recycling rates calculated?
So yeah, I guess Louise, we can sort of double team some of these questions, so feel free to. But it's quite simple, really. We have government reporting that we're required to do every quarter, either on a quarterly basis, biannually basis, or on an annual basis. But you can do it as frequently as a quarter, and it's effectively, you type in as much of the waste that you've collected over that period of time, waste and recycling. It is calculated on a tonnage basis. So it's effectively, say, and I'm picking this out of the air, but say it was 100,000 tons that was collected from St Albans over the year, then you then see what proportion of that was dry recycling, what proportion of that was food waste, what proportion was green waste, and what proportion was general waste, and it's effectively just split out by the tonnages. So the recycling rate is a sum total of all of those dry recycling fractions that I showed you earlier, which might be dry recycling, paper and card, food waste, and green waste all together. So that's basically how it's calculated.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that this is all reported into Herts County as well, and on the Herts County Waste Aware website, all of this information is available, and you can see what was collected by which district or borough, how much, the percentages, where it all goes. So if you've never looked at Waste Aware Hertfordshire website, I would highly recommend doing so. There's really detailed information in there.
That's good. It's a good site. That was my question. So I'm going to ask a quick supplemental, which is why is well, I think I know why the rate is different, but it's different if you go to Ronson's Way to what's collected at curbside, and I'm guessing that's because Ronson's Way is a specialist recycling centre, and therefore is because it's 78 at Ronson's Way as opposed to sort of 60 at curbside. And in that, is that just purely because it's actually a recycling centre and therefore is able to recycle a higher proportion?
Yeah, and obviously they're operated by Herts County Council, but they'll be taking other materials, things that we cannot collect at curbside. But yeah, and they probably have lower contamination as well, because you do have the staff buzzing around, making sure that you're only putting the right things in the right containers. So they probably don't really get rejected loads, but we can end up with rejected loads if there is contamination in the vehicle, and that does happen. We do find sometimes people have hidden domestic waste in their recycling bins. So I'm not going to say it's not unusual, but it has happened that there'll be domestic waste covered in some recycling. The crew think that looks okay. It's not until it goes into the back of the freighter, and there are little cameras on the freighter, and that the crew notice actually there's a load of landfill rubbish in that. So that could result in the whole vehicle, the contents of the whole vehicle being rejected, and that can really affect our rates.
I think that's interesting, because I think that was one of the questions. I might just drop down a little bit further, George, if I'm right. I think there was one of the questions might be a bit about that. So Selena, you asked, I'm very keen to understand what happens if the recycling box is mixed with things that people believe are recyclable but in fact aren't, or in fact deliberately mix them up. But yeah. One key product that I'm particularly concerned about is industrially compostable packaging. It looks like plastic, and I know from experience that many people, including local businesses, put it with plastic recycling. What happens, and how can we ensure that everyone who invests in this packaging is told exactly what to tell their customers they need to do with the packaging once it has been used? I wonder if that's part of simpler recycling, as we talked about. My understanding was that it had to be taken to an industrial facility, of which there are only a handful in the country. So industrially compostable packaging, I guess, is the central question there, and mixed recycling, or not.
Right.
So is this? Oh no, go on.
No, well, no. I was I'm scrolling back through to try and find that question, because it's quite a long one, and I might need to remind myself. So I'll just.
It's about 2022. I think it was typed in, Oliver.
Okay. I think just on the note of compostable packaging, it can be a little bit confusing. I think there's a lot. There's also a lot of signs put on to packaging nowadays. Is it biodegradable plastic? Is it compostable? Things like that. I believe that when it comes to food waste, we're fine with accepting the compostable packaging. It's got a little logo on it. It looks like a leaf, and that's okay for your food waste, because, like we were talking about before, when you have a big anaerobic digestion facility, it can process those basically and break it down. Where it's not so good is if that material then gets into the recycling stream, because, like you said, that is not a material that we can process, or our off-takers can process from your black bins, basically. So you do have to make sure that that doesn't go into those bins. When we talk about simpler recycling, which is, like I said, it's coming in 3 phases. Next year is going to be the phase for households. It is not a material that is being made mandatory for collection at curbside collections, and in fact, I think that it could be that some packaging producers will move away from using that because there are issues with those ending up in the recycling stream. But we're trying to work with industry to advise them on the best ways to do it, because everyone's trying to do the right thing, and we completely understand that. So I think when it comes to bags that say compostable, just make sure that those go into your food waste bins, basically, and you're best off there. I hope that has answered it. There was a few parts to it, but yeah, Louise, you probably add on to that.
Well, I don't want to undermine you at all, but just with regards to the food waste bags, you can actually use any bag other than black bin liner. Actually, any bag will do, because it all gets removed when the contents of the food waste is emptied into the reception area. All the food waste goes up a big sort of conveyor belt, and up at the top there are big sort of like claws which take out any packaging. So if you've used, for example, if you buy sliced bread and it's come in a plastic bag, use that for food waste, that's absolutely fine. That will be removed at the reprocessing anaerobic digestion plant. So don't worry about that too much. And I do also believe that North and East Herts have done a trial on collecting the stretchy plastic curbside. But the downside of that was that they were providing bags, like plastic bags, for you to put your plastic bags in. So, it sort of was creating plastic to collect plastic. So it's not as straightforward. And they haven't done a final report as to, whether they thought it was worthwhile doing. From my own experience, I mainly look after flats in the district, and all the time I see people who've put their recycling into plastic carrier bags and then just put the whole thing into the communal bin, recycling bin. And then we can't necessarily empty that recycling bin because it's got a carrier bag in. So, there is much work to do, because I will say, empty all of your recycling out of your carrier bag, but people just would rather take the carrier bag down, put the whole lot in the bin and walk away. So if we could accept it and recycle it, that would be amazing. But for the time being, that sort of stretchy plastic, I know supermarkets are collecting it, and that's the best thing to do with it for now.
I thought I understood that film plastics were part of simpler recycling and needed to be collected by local authorities from next year. Have I made that up?
It is coming in 2027.
27, sorry.
Yes, 2027. Yes.
Yeah, we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And there was just a little supplemental question to the last one. I just saw it got added to the chat just now, which is, God knows whether you know the answer to this, but it's quite an interesting point. So when the plastic is removed from the food waste by your process, what happens to the plastic?
Energy from waste. It's incinerated, and it's energy from waste.
Yeah, that's okay. It's an answer. That's what we wanted to know. So finally, George, you're back up to the start of the questions, I think, though we've covered a few on the way through.
Okay, I think we might have already got to, is this data readily available? Is that on the Herts Waste Aware website?
Yes, for local councils. But if you wanted to see councils across the country, then I understand, am I right, Oliver, that it's the Waste Data Flow website that's available for anyone, isn't it?
Waste Data Flow website, there is where everyone puts the stats into. If you can't access that, which I think is publicly available, but if you can't, then it's published annually on DEFRA's website, and it's also I think, as you've put somewhere, Let's Recycle is a really good website for up-to-date news, but they also have league tables in there, and they publish the most recent recycling rates for all of the boroughs, so you can see exactly how the recycling rates compare for St Albans to somewhere else.
Okay, that's fab. I think we've also discussed the film plastics in the simpler recycling. So that one's kind of covered. So the next question from Juliet is, with the clothes recycling option, does that include textiles like bedding, and what actually happens to it? Our recycling goes to Rainham. Any plans to get it taken more locally, as the emissions from this must be large?
So on the Rainham side of things, for now, it's no, we've got Rainham in St Albans. It's, you know, it's not the only borough that uses the facility either. What I would say is that there's not as many facilities like Rainham in the country. That's not just me saying that. It's quite cutting edge in the sort of technologies that it adopts in order to separate out all of the materials. So whereas some others might not be able to really get that that separation that's needed, because we always have to think about where the material will go to after that. We've always got to make sure that it's prepared and separated in a way to make it as attractive to off-takers so that it can be recycled properly. So Rainham is a facility that we've had for a number of years now that is quite unique in the different types of technologies that it adopts, and everything from using overband magnets to separate the metals, eddy currents to flick out things like the aluminium cans. Your glass gets taken separately, and then with other things, like your paper and cards, we've got optical sorters where it will sit over a I can't remember what it's called now. Sit over the line, basically, where the items will fly over quite quickly. The optical sorters will register what the material is, the plastics rather, not paper card, the plastics, when it sees it, and they will initiate a small but very precise gust of wind, if you like, to push it over into a separate hopper, separate from the other materials. So it's got quite a lot of technology that we've invested into it to make sure that we get the most out of the materials and we recycle it properly. So yeah, that's basically why we send it to Rainham. And Louise, I think you covered the clothes question, but I'll probably pass it to you for that one.
Yeah, just as a side to what you're saying, I don't know if anyone has ever Googled material recycling facility or looked on YouTube, but there are quite a lot of videos which show you exactly what happens at one of these plants and the machinery and how everything's sorted. And if you ever got 10 minutes to spare, I highly recommend it. It's absolutely fascinating how these machines sort out the different materials. But anyway, that's an aside.
Sorry, Louise, is that a MRF? Is that what I've understood to be called, a MRF?
Yeah, MRF, Materials Recycling Facility, yeah.
You don't take visitors, do you, Oliver? If we got a group together?
Well, we do, Duncan. And I'm not sure if Rainham specifically, I'm not sure if we still take visitors there, but we've got another facility in Southwark. We do actually do once a year, we do something called a Wonder Day. And we do try and do this as many of our facilities as possible, where we invite local members of the public to come around, and we'll take them around and show them. I'll need to just double check if the last one that we did at Rainham, but if you're ever in London, in just south of the river in a place called Southwark, we have a similar facility where we do regular tours, and we also have a Wonder Day there. So if you are interested, do Google Veolia Wonder Days and look out for the next one, and we can get something set up.
Perhaps that'd be brilliant. Perhaps we can chat afterwards at some point, Oliver. I'll get in touch with you after this, because I think there might be some appetite for some people for us to organise an event to do that.
Yeah, great.
So that'd be brilliant. As long as we're all travelling in EV.
The food waste plant in London Colney, they also do tours as well. Again, fascinating, really interesting. So the textiles that you put out, if you want to put textiles out, which Oliver was speaking about earlier, don't know if you could see the picture, but the hopper on the side of the vehicles is actually quite small. So it's only, you know, a small amount of textiles, and we're quite happy to take the unwearables, you know, your single sock, your tights with a ladder in, all those sort of things. Oh, I'm not going to give that to a charity shop, but I don't want to put it into landfill. You can still put those out because it all gets taken to a big warehouse where it's sorted and graded. And if it is an unwearable item, it's still used as rags. And that kind of, you know, those textiles are used to upholster car seats and that kind of thing. So they still have a use. They'll never be seen or loved again, but they'll still be useful.
Georgie.
Okay, so the next question, I think, based on the timings, I think this will have been for Oliver, was do the small businesses need to pay for this service, and how often is food waste collected?
Yes, so simple recycling for for larger businesses. So we define a large business in this case as if you've got 10 or more full-time employees. That could be across several sites. So if you think you're a cafe, for example, but you've got 2 or 3 cafes under the same franchise, and over the 3 of those cafes you've got 11 employees, then you would be you'd count towards this. Then yes, you're eligible. You have to make sure that you'll have a service set up, which would be a commercial service. So you'd have to contact a provider, a waste collector, to carry out that collection for you, which is chargeable. If you're a small business, then as I said, which is less than 10 employees, full-time staff, then you will eventually have to do it, but not until 2027. So you can either prepare for that now and set yourself up with a service, of course, or you can wait until 2027 to do that. But yes, those will be commercial services, so you will have to make sure that you're set up with a provider. So Veolia is one of the providers that do commercial waste services in St Albans, but there are others out there. I feel like the BBC, others do exist. But if you do ever have any questions about this, then we've got lots of information on our website about simple recycling and what you need. And so yeah, we can provide you with more information.
But if I can just say, all you'll be doing really is sorting your waste. So maybe at the moment, for example, you have 2 wheelie bins, you're a business, you've got 2 wheelie bins, they're collected once a week as landfill. Going forward, you might have just 2 bags of landfill, a wheelie bin of recycling, and 2 caddies of food waste, and it'll all cost exactly the same. So you won't actually really see a big difference in what you're paying for waste disposal. You are just required to sort it and have the correct containers.
And of course, in case you wanted to support the local business too, just in case that question was for Soil Squad, we can organise collections however many you want, weekly, bi-weekly or 3-weekly, and the price is £15 per collection. And obviously within that is part of your sort of CSR supporting for businesses, supporting the local community, knowing that is going to be that hyper-local collection going on to a local school. So you're kind of donating your food waste to a local school, and you're keeping it local. You're having a hyper local collection on a bike. It's kind of like your ultra clean food waste collection too. So yeah, let us know if you're interested in that as well.
Fab. Okay, the next question is what metals can we recycle in our black bin at home?
So these are your packaging, basically. So think of things from the kitchen so it's basically cans and foil. Is effectively what you can recycle at your curbsides. If you want to recycle anything else that's metallic, then you can take it to your recycling centres. But that's mainly what we're looking at the curbsides.
The aerosols are okay. You can put aerosols in as well. So if you've got any of those in the bathroom, don't forget, the recycling isn't just generated in the kitchen, but all throughout the house. you know, especially if you've got teenagers and you ever go through their bin, there's quite a lot of recycling that, you know, you might have to, well, we might be inclined to pick out, or was that just me? I don't know. But yeah, so aerosol cans, that's fine as well. But it is, yes, just your domestic, really. Lids of jars, that's okay. And if you do have foil, then the bigger the ball, the better. Or, you know, your mince pies at Christmas, don't put in a single tray. Try and save up your trays and get it into a nice big ball, because a lot of the equipment, you know, there's just holes, and any small pieces will just fall down the holes and it won't be captured. So the bigger you can make it, if you can sort of save it up, scrunch it into a nice big ball, then the better.
And sorry, just that I think that's really great, actually, because the next question, but one, was exactly that, which you probably saw, Louise. You know, what tips can we give? I wonder if you know, I was going to show on my screen the recycling guide that the council do. I won't do it, but we can put a link to it in the chat or whatever. It's which is really useful. But it would be, I can't remember there being in there anything like tips like that, which it might be quite useful to kind of to add to that, you know, because
Yeah,
people don't
you're right.
and I'll tell you why I think that's quite useful is because, apart from anything else, somebody else asked, why do we have to put tops on bottles, for example? And I happen to know, because I listened to a podcast, which I'll tell people about later on, that was explaining why now quite a lot of bottle tops are tethered to the bottle. And it's because even though they may be made of different materials, those small items get lost in the process. I think, Oliver, maybe you tell me if I'm right on this, because obviously you're dealing with a lot of waste, and you know, there's, you know, something like a small piece of aluminium foil or a small bottle top is likely to get sort of blown out of it and drop down the side or whatever. So, but if you keep it together with something larger, which wouldn't fall out of the process, then you can later separate them and do whatever you need to do with them. Is that, am I right with
Yeah,
that, guys?
that is true. Also on the litter front as well, obviously,
Yes.
lots of little bottle tops all over the countryside is a nightmare. So it will cut down on the litter. So that's a good thing as well. But if you could squeeze any of your bottles, squeeze the air out of the bottle, then put the lid back on, then it just gives you a little bit more room in your recycling bin, because hopefully you're recycling at capacity and you oh, I haven't got enough room in my black bin. Well, if you squeeze down any of your plastic bottles, put the lid back on, and then you've given yourself a whole load more space.
Brilliant, thank you. Georgie.
Okay, so we have a question now which is asking, what is the actual rate of recycling for our black bins? How much is incinerated, as the national statistics show 17% of our plastic is only recycled? And they've said, forgive the questions, but I'm skeptical. What actually happens to the items we put in our different bins when you see how much we ship abroad?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I have put a link to the Waste Aware website, and there is a page that shows you exactly where in the country everything goes, and if anything does go abroad, it will tell you where it goes. Completely transparent. There's no sort of, oh, and there's a bit, none of that. It's completely transparent. So do have a look on there. I hope that, you know, satisfies everybody about where materials go. I'm not quite sure if we have any that's a very low grade, Oliver, that doesn't, you know, doesn't make the grade. I think it all still goes within this country. There's only a very, very small amount. So I'm not saying this is for the whole country. I'm just talking about Hertfordshire. Very, very little goes abroad.
Yeah, I don't have the figures to hand, but we try where we can to keep as much within the UK, within UK markets, and it all comes down to the market for these materials. Effectively, we're seeing that more of the markets are coming up within the UK, and those are the ones that we'll try and use where we can. So yeah, we always just try and we go to where the market is for the materials, and you know, we're pleased to see that, and you know, with the legislation kicking in over the next few years, that there will be more of these markets, more than ever in the UK as well. So it's pleasing to see that we'll be able to keep as much of it here that we can.
Yeah, and a lot of these materials, well, they are commodities, so there are countries that want to buy. So if that is the case, then it may go abroad, but because it's been bought, not just because we've tried to offload it on a remote beach somewhere and hope it never finds its way back to us. It will be because it's been purchased as a commodity.
Okay, fab. That was really useful. I think we'll do a couple of the more quick fire questions now that have been sent in from Fran. So the first one is, where can used vapes be recycled or safely disposed of?
So wherever somewhere sells a vape, they should have a take back scheme for the vape. So you can make sure that wherever you buy it, then they should have a bin for it. So all supermarkets and markets. Louise?
Yeah, and it's the same as batteries as well. If they sell it, they've got to provide a bin. It might not be on display, but by law, they have to take them back. So yeah, they're a major cause of vehicle fires. We've lost or had severe damage to some of our freighters over the last couple of years by people just throwing vapes into landfill. So it's really important. Problem, yeah, massive. So yeah, just if anyone goes to buy a vape, take your old ones back. Sainsbury's definitely have got big containers, I've noticed, by their customer service desk. So
yeah, on that note, vapes, batteries, you see a lot more e-scooters and things like that nowadays that are getting thrown in the bins incorrectly. Anything with the battery in it, please do not put it into your bins, please, because they cause fires. They cause fires all the time, and if it doesn't happen in our vehicle, then it will likely happen at our facility, and it is very, very, very dangerous. So yes, by all means, please do make sure that batteries are kept separate.
Oh, that's great advice. I heard that the disposable vapes are not going to be sold for very much longer. Did you know anything about that?
1st of June.
1st of June, okay.
Yeah. That's it's illegal to buy single-use vapes now.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Okay, the next one is, can used rubber gloves be recycled, and if so, where?
I'm not sure about that one. Louise, you might know somewhere.
I don't think they can be, but I tell you what I do is that I wish I'd known about this earlier. I could have had here's one I made earlier. I cut the sleeves into ribbon and make elastic bands. Do you know what I mean? So just cut them into the sleeves into bands, and then if I'm freezing something, for example, I will put the band round the container and I'll write on the band, I don't know, chilly June 26, put it in the freezer. So there is a way to reuse them, get a little bit more life out of them. But oh, hang on, Marigold recycle theirs, but yeah, probably quite a niche recycling scheme.
Yeah, right. Probably is. I know that. So a couple of the things that we do at the greenhouse are through TerraCycle, and TerraCycle have a couple of rubber glove recycling programs, some of which I think are free. Yeah, but I don't know the detail of that, but we will check that out and see if that's something we can start to collect through TerraCycle. It's difficult for us to do any of their paid programs because we just don't have the funding. But have a look on the TerraCycle site as well while you're waiting for us to try and work on that.
Okay.
Disposable coffee cups. I think you missed, Georgie. Above the rubber gloves.
Oh yes, you're right. Sorry. Yes. So, where can disposable coffee cups be recycled?
Unfortunately, it's not something that we can take for recycling at the curbside, but there are a few take-back schemes. Louise, do you know any that's more local to St Albans? It's been a little while since
Costa will take all, but also we've got a couple of recycling banks for Tetra Pak. And you can put in those coffee cups in there, because they're another one which are quite misleading. Compostable, and that all sounds very, very good, but in fact they're not compostable, because they've got a thin layer of plastic, lined with a thin layer of plastic, which won't break down, and it's not easy to separate that layer of plastic from the cardboard, which is easily recyclable. So that's why we can't accept them. They need a very specialist process. So yeah, other than Costa and the Tetra Pak banks, it is tricky. Even if you were to put it in your garden compost, you would probably still find it in some form or another in 4 or 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much. I think maybe we should address Peter's question about the cost of garden waste. So he's asked, what is the true cost of garden waste collection? As the council literature state, the charge subsides other recycling activities and the charge is based on the amounts Three Rivers Council charge. Why do I see green bins being emptied from properties that have not subscribed? What are the council going to do about the growing number of bins that have permanently taken up residence on the pavements or have become unofficial bollards to reserve parking spaces?
Well, that's quite a lot of questions.
Yeah, sorry, got them all out in one.
So the first one, the charge for this year, it has gone up slightly, I understand. I'm sorry to say I don't deal with the garden waste, so I don't know the actual cost of it. It works out at something like £4. I don't know, I sorted this out the other day. Obviously it's opt-in. It was a free for everybody to use previously, but there are plenty of people who live in flats, don't have gardens, so it was a service that they weren't getting, and yet it was being provided. It was a blanket service. So I don't personally know how the cost was worked out. This is something that councillors will sit down in a budget meeting and they will discuss what other councils are doing, what they feel is a fair price, and we will be advised, and then we will run it accordingly. So that was the garden waste. Yeah, with regards to people just putting a green bin out and hoping, then we do really, really need to clamp down on that. And if you ever see anyone and you think, I can't see a sticker on that bin, I'm sure they haven't, then you can definitely send us details and we will go and have a look and we will monitor. And we do have a letter that we send out to say, we see that you've been presenting your green bin. We know that you don't have a subscription. We will be removing your green bin in the near future. So that is something that we are starting to do. It is a big job and there are just the 4 of us. So that's not to say it's not important. It's definitely on our radar because we are aware more people just chancing their arm, and that's not fair on the people who are paying for it. People using bins as bollards, again, very little we can do about that. It's not illegal to do that. It's just really, really annoying, but we can't confiscate their bins. So unless, maybe it's something you could speak to your local councillor and ask them to I don't know, review the situation, see if there is anything we can do.
I see Peter has said that he did try and report it, but was given the brush. I mean, I know, I could see, Matt Fisher is on the call. I know, Matt, maybe you can try and get people to take some notice of that. Sorry, being on the spot. I think we've nearly come to the end of the questions, haven't we, Georgia? Was there?
We're pretty near. I think quite a few of the ones that have come after we've sort of already asked. I think there's one question which is the best way to deal with beds. So like mattresses, duvets, pillows, cushions. with the facilities available now and in the near future? And then there's one more questions about sort of microplastics and plastics, one that I've received from social media and one that's been put in the chat that would be good to get answers to. But I think other than that, we're pretty near the end of the questions.
Just quickly on the mattresses and bedding, I think we're limited in what we can obviously do at the curbsides. If you book a collection for it, then we will take it. But you also have the option to take it to the recycling centre, and it's not something that we operate, but as Veolia, but. So I'm not sure exactly where that goes, but you may be lucky there. I haven't seen the question about the microplastics, Georgia. If you could read it out, please.
Yeah, sorry, that was something that I have been sent through via Facebook from somebody who wasn't able to attend tonight. I'll just pop what they asked into the chat.
So look, can I just say then, with regards to bedding, pillows, etc., there's a couple of options. You can offer on Free Cycle or something like that. People are often looking for bedding, or animal shelters, they're quite keen for duvets and what have you. I made a lovely bed for our dog. I just had 2 old pillows, sewed it together along the long side and covered it in an old fleece blanket. She loves it. So there are people looking for them. Or Dunelm Mill on the Hatfield Road, they have a massive box and they will take old pillows and duvets and beddings, towels, etc. The mattress thing, there's new legislation, I say new, a few years ago, about soft furnishings and sofas, mattresses, what have you. It's called POPs. Oliver, can you remember what POP stands for?
Persistent organic pollutants.
Yeah, that's because they're sort of all treated with so they're fire retardant, but that is a pollutant. So if they are just going into landfill, they can seep out toxins for years and years and years. So sofas, mattresses, etc., do have to be collected separately and treated very, very differently. And again, they go into a separate area at Waterdale recycling plant or transfer station in Garston. And from there they will be properly disposed of.
And then I can just see the question coming about microplastics. So the facilities that we take the food and the gun waste to in St Albans isn't treated by Veolia directly, so I can't comment necessarily on what they've got there, but perhaps Louise has a bit of information. But typically at those sorts of facilities, there's there's shredding that goes on for the materials entering those facilities, and there's a process to remove any plastics before it's basically transferred into or converted into processed into compost or digester or fertilizer and things like that. So there is a process as part of these facilities to make sure that those items are stripped out before it is made into the final product.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the Environment Agency have really, really strict guidelines as well, and will inspect all of the composting sites, AD sites, to make sure that they are fully adhering to the guidelines. I did listen to a science program the other day, which was really quite depressing, and they were just saying that microplastics have basically been found everywhere, in like literally every living organism, on every stream and mountain and you name it. It's quite
our brains, apparently.
But, yeah, it's we can all do what we can to minimize it, but I'm afraid they're with us.
Right. Well, do feel free to add any more questions, but I think we've just about reached the end, except for just one I had myself, which I might ask. But let me first say thank you very much to Louise and to Oliver and to Vicky. I mean, your talks were great, but it's been really, really helpful to be able to explore some of those other questions with you. Can I just invite people to contact the greenhouse. If you've got other recycling questions, do feel free to send them to us. And I can see Louise nodding because I think she knows where I'm going next with this, because we will then be able to perhaps pass those questions on and get some answers for you from Louise or an Oliver or whoever may have the best answer to them. I put a link in the chat to the SADC recycling guide, which is a helpful kind of, I think it's about a 7-page glossy on recycling. It's not glossy because it's online, but I mean it's actually really very helpful. And I think one of the things you'll find is that there's a lot more recycling done than you might imagine. And I think the other thing I would say about that is, if you do, the next time you go to Ronson's Way, have a look at some of the stuff that you know in the deep and dark corners of that place. If you go into the sort of far right hand corner, for example, you'll see they will securely dispose of your phones for you, for example. And so actually there's much more available than you might imagine. It just takes a trip up to the I shouldn't call it the dump, the recycling facility in your electric car.
Can I add to that, Duncan? Sorry. I think most of the dumps now, there is a reuse shop. So if you have something and you think, I don't want it anymore, I'm not going to the charity shop, swing by the reuse shop and you can donate it there, and that might be treasure for somebody else. So there'll be lots of, I don't know, bits of furniture, crockery, pictures, paint. We've got a paint reuse area, definitely in the Harpenden one. We now collect coffee pods in the in all of the dumps. So yeah, there is lots going on. But yeah, you might want to either buy something from the reuse shop or donate something to the reuse shop. It doesn't have to be next stop landfill or the dump. So yeah, agreed. Have a little look.
You stepped slightly into the lion's den there, because as you probably know, the one in St Albans isn't there anymore, and the closest one is Harpenden for the reuse shop.
Oh.
But that's why I said we can reopen the reuse shop. The container's still there, but it's not open. And the last thing I was going to say is, I put in the chat a link to something called Talking Rubbish, which is a podcast run by a couple of guys out of Bristol, who started about a year ago. One of them wrote a book called The Rubbish Book, which in itself is very, very good. And it just sort of like a little square book that gives you a page on each type of material and the technology at that time and how things were done. They realized that things move on quite quickly, and so they eventually ended up, they have a website, but they have this podcast. It's weekly. They started by going through all of those fundamental components of recycling, which was very helpful in itself. And now they, on a weekly basis, they deal with a topical issue. And then every 5th issue, they have an expert from the industry comes in and does an interview. It sounds kind of geeky, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Pick it up. I've watched it. And I actually watched them do their latest podcast live at a thing called Earthfest in King's Cross at the weekend. They're great, so plug for them. It's really worth listening to. Thanks again, guys. As I say, we'll collect the questions, and my last question was, to what extent do you think there's capacity for people like yourselves, Veolia and SADC, to try to convince businesses, I mean, even on a local basis, to start doing some of this stuff themselves? For Boots to not have a box that is showing off that it's made of recycled material, but has a slot so little that you could hardly get a single pack in, for example. It would be lovely to think that there are more people trying to kind of push that, through the democratic process, if you like, than just people like us in the greenhouse. And you don't have to answer that. Perhaps it would be great if you guys could do that.
Yes, well, certainly, and our sustainability officer as well. We will always try and push for these initiatives to be brought, to the front of the store. And like Costa, they do their recycling, but you'd have to look for it. It would be great if they could have something on their front window, bring all your cups here. I think it's just a case of storage more than anything else, because certainly when the blister packs could be collected by like local heroes, I would often go round to our local one, drop off all of my blister packs, and there would just be boxes and boxes and boxes. And then she'd take them over to Luton, Superdrug, when they were doing it. And I think they were just not horrified, but just overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of, that they just didn't have storage for that. They've got storage for products to put out on the shelves and sell, but not for waste to keep hold of, because I don't know how often those things would get picked up and taken away for recycling.
Yeah. Good. Right. Well, I suppose it just remains for me to say thanks to everybody who's come and joined the podcast. Thank you so much for doing that. And I think it's a lot of good information. And I think also is we are lucky to live in an area where recycling is taken seriously, and waste management is taken seriously. We were top for recycling in this district, as the guy said, sort of 3 or 4 years ago. We're still in that top 5. Let's try and help the guys make us top again. In the next year by
it's down to the
out.
residents. I mean, we do the collecting and stuff, but it's the residents
We've
putting
got to
out
put it out.
stuff, and
exactly.
So well done. Keep doing it.
Yeah, no, it's good. Great. Thanks again, everybody, and come to the next greenhouse event, and hopefully we'll see you at that.